Good day for you so far?
So far, it's been great. Yes.
Great. Well, congratulations on the return of your show. What, a 7-month hiatus?
Yes. 7 months and change.
7 months and change. Any changes to the format itself?
No, we're not changing a thing. No, it was, we were firing on all cylinders before. We have a great team. We know our audience. We know the tone. We know the topics that resonate. And obviously the topics change, but we're pretty much firing on all cylinders, and it's very exciting.
When you run a show like yours, how far in advance are guests booked? Because every talk show you're gonna get a different answer. Like when I'm interviewing people, sometimes it's like 30 minutes in advance, and sometimes it's 3 weeks.
No, we usually don't book people unless someone's got like a book tour, or it's someone who's, right now we don't have guests in studio.
Right.
But if it's someone who's coming through New York who's a normal guest, we'll book them in advance. But typically we do a lot of booking the Friday, the week before, and then sort of fill things out throughout the week. And then we have, various experts and writers and contributors that we can go to who have lanes of expertise that we can lean on when there's big news and stuff that's really changing. Right.
With people who host talk shows, the average person doesn't really take entertainment as seriously as I do, or television. I always want to know who are the people behind the people. But
yes.
In your case with your show, what's the most time-consuming part of the whole thing? Because you're just on camera for the broadcast, but obviously there's hours and hours of prep.
Well, the prep itself, it's really interesting because with different topics, you'll find that the knowledge that you sort of gather along the way is cumulative. So, whether it's mass surveillance or just the political culture, when you're looking at the electoral map, things like that, you sort of take different facts and tuck them in. Mm-hmm. But a lot of time goes into gathering information, and it's almost like learning, because sometimes we have learning that happens incidentally, where
right.
we sort of things up along the way and sort of store them for more formal learning, where we sit down and with a greater focus learn something in detail. And that's what happens. Sort of the informal information gathering happens throughout the day, every day, but then the really focused stuff happens when we have packets and guests and everything, the rundown of the show set. And then I will sit down, I get a packet for each individual segment of the show, which is, something that happens between commercials. Mm-hmm. And I will get, the guest that is booked, the topic that we have, and then the packet includes research. And then I take all of that, and then I go and find some different material, and then I write questions based on who's there.
Wow, I really appreciate you explaining all of that. Because again, I don't think the average person realizes that there's team, there's prep, and whoa.
So here's a packet.
I'm not zooming in, don't worry.
And these are questions that I have for Shannon Bream. And then I will have questions for, and so her questions are in pink. So I am I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
So I color code all of my questions. And then Frank Luntz we're talking about Frank Luntz with Brian Morgenstern, and then his questions will be in blue. So then I know if I have to glance quickly, I will know which color to access based on the guest that I'm talking to.
I assumed, based on all your prior experience, not just MTV, the morning show you used to have with Ahmet, that you had to, by default, become the world's fastest improviser. So I didn't know if you just had this improv background and what you were saying on camera was entirely like it just came to you, or if it was 90% prep for you. The credit to you either way.
So I end up using about 50% of the questions, but I learned this way early on when I was in radio. The most important thing you can do as an interviewer is listen. Because that's where you get your best question, and that's also where you get your next question. And so when you live in the moment, because that's what listening forces you to do, then that's when you're able to respond. And I'll come up with things sort of just pop into my head. And, with time and maturity, I don't blurt out every single thing that pops in my head, because sometimes it's completely inappropriate. And sometimes I'm like, screw it, and I just say it anyways.
Wow. Were you in radio before MTV?
Yes, so I started in radio when I was 18, and I worked at K-Rock in Los Angeles.
World famous K-Rock.
World famous K-Rock, yeah.
Wow, I had no idea about that. So you preceded Carson Daly on the intern department over there.
Yes, and I preceded Carson, and Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla came after I left. I was there, the music director when I was hired as an intern was Louis Largent. And
wow.
then, so our boss, Andy Schoen, who was an incredible program director, he and Louis worked in concert with one another, really refining and curating the music that was on K-Rock.
Right.
And Andy was hired, the boy genius, was hired at MTV to be a senior vice president of programming, and he brought Louis Largent and me along with him. And so Louis and I started at MTV in September of 1992. We actually, Andy and his wife and Louis and his wife and I all flew out to New York on the same plane together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Even though I'm a New York guy, K-Rock LA broke so many of the bands that were inspired. The things I still listen to today, all the great punk rock came from that station. A lot of the great alternative stuff did too, but you as well. I say you and Matt Pinfield were kind of responsible for so many of the bands, whether or not you chose the stuff or you were told to play it. It's kind of like you're synonymous with generations of music that people are into. Do you find that people often compliment you to this day over that? Or is it just, well, she was on stage or on screen and that was that?
No, because, people talk to me about music that's so important. And, when you're formulating your own identity, music is critical into that. And if you really love music, even more so. And you tend to go back to that stuff. So I talk to a lot of people and, they talk about the videos that they loved and the songs that they listen to. And, that's why people love music services, because they can really refine what they want to listen to based on new stuff and new suggestions, but also stuff that just makes them feel good because it takes them back to a really pure time in their lives. And it's interesting because Matt Pinfield and I are kind of a contrast, because he is a music expert. I'm a music fan. So I love the music that I love. I don't know all the music that there is to know out there. I have so much respect for people who do, because for them, it's like a sports expert. It's a full-time job. Like, I could never call a baseball game, but I love watching baseball. I love the New York Yankees. I also love the San Francisco Giants. But, I can sit and watch a baseball game from start to finish because I'm a huge baseball fan. But, do I know the intricacies and the rules? Absolutely not. That's why I stand in awe of people. And I really feel like music and sports are similar in that way, because although it's very subjective, to objectively know the history and the influences and the bands and songs and albums themselves, I think takes a really special part of your brain.
Being a big cable person still to this day, decades after getting that, big national spotlight at MTV, did music take a back seat for you, or are you still a big fan and listener in general?
Oh no, I listen all the time. Music is really important to me. And so now I play drums, and I listen to songs differently. And I play drums the way I exercise. Like, it's a way for me to shake everything out of my brain, and it's a way to just feel something completely. So now I listen to music differently, and I try and learn the drum parts, and I try and listen to bands that have challenging drum parts that I try and play along with. And it's so much fun. And I'm always trying to get my daughters to play music. I have two girls, 11 and 15. And my 11-year-old is teaching herself how to play ukulele, and it's awesome. And I think it's so good for your brain.
Did you have any instrumental background before picking up drums?
I grew up playing flute.
Okay.
And it was really funny because I played flute in elementary school with the guy who ended up being Everclear's tour manager. And when they came to the MTV studio, Art Alexakis like, "Do you recognize Sean?" And I was like, "No," because he was a fully formed human. And he was like, "Yeah, we were Mr. Bartman's band together." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's amazing," because he was a really talented flautist. And then I sang. So growing up in Oregon, track is and was a religion. My dad was a marathon runner. My brother was a high jumper. And so it was just, they decided that I was going to run track, and I love track. It was great.
Right.
It was super fun. And when I got to junior high, I was like, okay, great. I'll run track. And so I was on the track team and I was practicing. And then the choir teacher was like, hey, we have this special choir and it's audition only. And I'm inviting you to audition to see if you can make it. And I made the choir. And so I was like, at that point, I had to decide like track or choir. And I became a choir nerd from that moment on. And that was the last time I played soccer for a couple more years. But after that, I devoted my extra time to being a jackass.
You say jackass, I say icon of broadcast media. Something I'm curious about with Fox News, MTV, has there been a lot of overlap in terms of running into people where these people you interviewed then and now you're speaking with them or running into them nowadays? I asked that before you answer because Fox does have a cool summer concert series, or at least did in prior summer seasons, where you'd see bands like Three Doors Down or that kind of thing performing there.
Yeah. There are more country acts, which we didn't see a lot of on MTV. I was working at Alt 98.7 in LA. I did a morning music show there for several years in LA, and stopped in 2014 or 2015 and interviewed a lot of bands there. And that was really fun. But now it's like the rock stars here are different. So, it's like if I see Rand Paul walk in the hall, I'm like, oh my God, it's Rand Paul. But the cool thing about this building is it's, the main headquarters here is also the headquarters for Fox Sports. And since I am a Fox Sports fan, Troy Aikman came in one day. And they almost had to peel me away from him because I went to UCLA and I was like, you're so important to me. And he was like, you're creepy.
I highly doubt that one happened, but it's funny the geographic distance between, without saying where Fox News is. I used to work at Viacom, so MTV's always been around the 1515, the 1540. It's all been around the same kind of area. So you're 2 blocks from where you were working. Yeah. So all your New York jobs seem like they've been within 3 blocks of each other.
Yeah, it's funny. And the funny thing is, because you still see Carmine's and a lot of the same places. And when I was in high school and I was on a theater tour in New York, and it's the first time I'd been in New York, and I was like, I love this. I cannot wait to move back here at some point. It just took me a few days being in the city, and I was like, this is fantastic. And it was everything that I had seen on Letterman and SNL come to life. Yeah. And I got to experience it a little bit, so I was really excited to move back then. And it is funny to see all that stuff and see how Times Square has changed, because when I moved here in September of 1992, it was all like, it really was porn theaters. And it was super gross and like, Nation of Islam guys, like screaming setup and
the Black Hebrews at Herald Square.
Yeah. And I loved it. I'm like, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I want. And the only shame is I was diagnosed with celiac disease, so I can no longer eat New York pizza.
I mean, every now and then you see good gluten-free pizza, so don't hold
I've honestly never had good gluten-free. It's fine. It's like a cardboard delivery device for the delicious toppings, which is really what pizza is. And it's, it's fine.
Right. Well, you're not the first Fox personality that I've had the pleasure of interviewing. One of them most recently was Kat Timpf. And Kat surprisingly knows Jerry Only from the Misfits, and she knows her punk rock. Yeah. Besides you, who has the second best taste of all the on-air personalities at Fox?
Oh gosh, that's Greg Gutfeld. Greg Gutfeld he's a muso. He actually has encyclopedic knowledge of punk rock, and he's really, really brilliant when it comes to music. And he'll hear anything that's playing and be like, oh, remember their 1984 album? And I'm like, I wish I did. I really, really wish I did.
Did you say 1984 because there's Eddie Van Halen on my shirt and you're just 1984?
Oh, Eddie.
I know, one of the biggest losses ever. Did you have any on-camera Van Halen or Roth interviews, or were you too alternative at MTV for that time?
Yeah, they really kept us apart. So in 1996, they reunited with David Lee Roth for 20 minutes. And they went on stage, and David Lee Roth like took in all the adulation of the crowd because everyone's mind was blown. And they were so excited because they thought it was going to be Dan Hagar forever.
Yeah.
And then we were all backstage in the green room, and you know, I was in a beautiful light pink ball gown with, you know, a little white collar and little white gloves, and it was a beautiful dress. It truly looked like a Cinderella dress. And so I'm standing there with David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen, and David Lee Roth goes, "That dress is beautiful. It'll look even better all crumpled up on my hotel room floor." And Eddie Van Halen looked like he wanted to kill him. He was so disgusted that he would say something like that. And I'm laughing. I think it's great because I love cheesy pickup lines. Like, you know, if you go up to a girl and say, "Do you want to dance?" and she says no, you say, "No, I said you look at fat in those pants." Which is not an appropriate thing to say, and we all know that. And no one's ever said that to me that I know of. But Eddie Van Halen came up and apologized. He's like, "I'm so sorry." And I'm like, it's not a big deal. But then they kicked him out of the band again.
That is so interesting that you just said that, because I secretly have a podcast about David Lee Roth that I do on the side from all the integrity-oriented things I do. And people don't know very much about the straw that broke the camel's back with Van Halen parting ways with Roth again in '96. And people have said, well, there's a couple of comments that Dave made at the press conference that made Eddie change his mind. And you might have been the breakup cause of it.
I hope so. Just because it would be nice to be the impetus for something. But he was so disgusted, and he was so like visibly aggravated. So that clearly was a moment. But that's funny because a lot of people don't remember that they got back together then that year, and I'm so glad you did because it was. But also, David Lee Roth, when he became an EMT, did so totally under the radar and totally helped people. And he and Henry Rollins had a very close friendship. And so Henry Rollins, back when you had to pass around like the Jerky Boys and red tapes and all that stuff, he was playing some for David Lee Roth, and Henry's laughing, and David Lee Roth's like, "I'm sorry, but I don't think this is funny because you're really taking advantage of someone, and you're making fun of them, and they're not a party to it. And I think there's something about it that's very cruel." And I was like, "That's not the David Lee Roth that I thought I knew."
You just blew my mind because I'm interviewing one of the Jerky Boys next week. And if I have permission to relay that story, I gladly will.
No.
And before I ask you two quick questions, are we pressed for time, or it's okay?
I think we're okay. I think we're good until 6:30. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll make these quick and relatively painless. So when I was 18 or 19 years old, getting my start as an interviewer, starting young like Kennedy did, and I interviewed Henry Rollins, and I asked him a question about you and your friendship with him, and he got irate at me. What? You thought there was chemistry or something? I'm like, "Oh, sorry, Henry." So,
When was that?
2001?
Oh, okay. No, we were still friends at that point.
Yeah. Well,
he's really mad at me now, but whatever.
Look, all these great stories that you've told me, who can be mad at Kennedy in my book? This
he knows that I have like tremendous respect for him, but I also like making fun of him because he's so self-serious. But we never ever had a spark. There was never a romantic side to our friendship. And he was living in the East Village, just a couple blocks away from me when I was there. And so we used to hang out at like 2 a.m. and go to diners late at night. And then we would sit on my stoop and have popsicles. And my roommate at the time, who was in talent and artist relations at MTV, so she would help pick the videos, she would just roll her eyes and she was like, "Can't you two just hook up?" And I'm like, "It's not like that."
Yeah, it was good, clean fun.
Yeah, and it was a nice friendship. But now he's really, really mad at me. So that's
hey, I'm not going there. I just want to say 2 quick questions, and the first one is, everyone gives Lisa Loeb all the credit in the world for making glasses cool within the musical realm. I think you deserve the credit for that. Have you and Lisa Loeb ever talked about that?
Oh, we've never talked about that, but we have talked. And she dated Dweezil Zapper for a while, and Dweezil Zapper is a really good friend of mine. But it was really funny because the first Video Music Awards I attended after having been on air for a year, because I was hired at MTV got to go to the 92 Video Music Awards, and then a couple days later I was on air. So in 93, I went as an actual person who worked at MTV, and this little girl came up to me, and she was so excited, and she had her autograph book, and she was like, I'm so sorry to bother you, but can I please have your autograph? And I'm like, oh my gosh, sure, yeah, like this is a big deal. This is really cool. And so I start signing it. She goes, I can't wait to tell my friends I met Lisa Loeb. So I just signed it like, la la la, Lisa Loeb, la la la.
Got it.
Nope.
That is a small world because Dweezil's a friend. She was with Dweezil for a long time. You did the morning show with Ahmet. The relationships that you've had, hopefully there's a third book because you've published 2 great books. Hopefully there's a third book with even more anecdotes coming from you.
Yeah, the MTV one, I really tried to make specific to MTV, but I think there's a larger book out there that is very self-deprecating and sort of a what not to do. Because and Greg Gutfeld just released his book, which is sort of the anti-self-help book, that I think is probably going to be his best-selling book ever because of that, because people secretly want advice. But I do love writing, and I'm going to do more writing for foxnews.com, which is very exciting.
That's very exciting. Well, I'm glad that the Kennedy Show is back. I'm glad there might be a book again. There might be more on foxnews.com. My closer, any last words for the kids?
For the kids. Everything is for the kids.
Yeah.
It's all for the kids.
Duh.
The whole thing. Every brick in this wall of freedom, it's for the young people.
Those are great words.
And,
right
it's like my greatest piece of advice for the kids, go big or go home.
And you got your start early. You still got a great career. I think if there's anybody to learn from about who to have that career in entertainment-related journalism, it's you. So thank you so much for your time, Kennedy.
You're so kind. It's so good to talk to you.
All my pleasure. Keep up the greatness there.
All right, dear. Talk to you soon.
And thanks.
Paltrocast.